30% of Americans can't cover a surprise $400 expense, which is absolutely crazy to me because for the good year of 2023, I've set the goal of saving $50,000. And no, I'm not doing that by making $500,000 a year. I'm doing it by living on less than $20,000 a year. So today, I'm walking through my payday routine and how I'm managing my money. For those of you that are new, I'm the fireman, and I'm trying to reach financial independence before I turn 30 years old. And I've said before on this channel that there are just three things you need to do to retire early. You have to make, you have to save, and you have to invest. You can't save more than you make, and you can't invest more than you save. So having a payday routine to convert my earnings into investments as efficiently as possible is super important for reaching financial independence. So underpinning my entire payday routine is I track every expense. I'm super grateful that my parents made me do this when I was young, and at the time it was just a little note card in my wallet, but now I use a simple spreadsheet like this. It's nothing fancy, just the category for the expense or income, the date, and any notes about it. You can get a lot fancier than this, but this is all that I need. If you want, you can find spreadsheet templates or even budget software, but no matter how you do it, tracking every expense is going to be super helpful later on. Anyway, let's get into my 6-step routine. Step 1 is actually getting that money in the first place. I get paid every 2 weeks, and I'm a salaried employee, so I get paid the same amount whether I work overtime or not. I've been lucky that I haven't had to work overtime yet, but I know a few senior employees that do, so maybe that'll come later. Either way, now that I've made money, I want to start saving it. But I can only save what I don't spend, so we need to talk about expenses. That brings us to step 2, which is taxes. Taxes are the first expense because staying out of jail is the #1 priority. And this is actually a really big expense for me. I think about 30% of my paycheck goes towards taxes, which means I spend more in taxes than I actually spend on my own lifestyle. I don't actually mind taxes that much though, mostly because the great folks at HR just take it out automatically from my paycheck. So it never really feels like a big expense. Either way, it is really important for reaching financial independence, and it is the first thing that gets deducted. Next up are the necessary expenses. For me, these are rent, utilities, and insurance. Some people will include food here too, but that's such a flexible expense, I'll include it later on. Insurance comes right out of my paycheck, so it's easy enough. I'm on a pretty bare bones company plan. It just made way more sense than any of the other options. Now, rent is easily my biggest expense outside of taxes. It's almost 2/3 of my living expenses. So if I have a rent payment coming up, I make sure I leave a little extra in my bank account. Utilities are a little more variable, and I just have to pay them whenever my landlady sends them to me. But they usually only average about $100 a month, so they don't make a huge difference on my payday routine. All right, so moving on to step 4, and that's everything else I need. So that's things like food and my gym bills and, well, that's kind of it actually. Sure, there are a few miscellaneous purchases, and there's also a couple expenses to keep my blog, Fireman's Blog, up and running, but it's not much. And since I bike to work instead of owning a car, that cuts out an entire category of expenses. Since I only buy what I need, this step is really simple. Now that we've earned our money and spent what we have to, we're almost to the fun stuff. But first, there's just one more thing we need to do, step 5, which is to top off our emergency fund. I generally keep around $3,500 to $4,000 in the bank, and I never let this go under $2,500. That's based on my personal expenses and my risk tolerance. That's over 3 months of rent and utilities, and it's over 2 months of all of my expenses combined. It's also more than my entire insurance deductible, so having this amount in the bank is just kind of what lets me sleep easy at night. Now, I've seen a lot of influencers and advisors saying to keep this emergency fund account as a separate account to avoid temptation, but I don't really like this advice. To me, I'm a grown adult, I can use my own discipline, so I just have one account. Anything that doesn't stay in this emergency fund or isn't preparing for like a month's rent or any other big expense goes into the final step, step 6. Step 6 is where I invest the rest. Again, the whole purpose of my payday routine is to get as much from my earnings into investments, because it's investments that really matter and help me retire early. Now, using the 4% rule of thumb, I need about 25 times my annual expenses in invested assets to be financially independent. So not only will this money contribute to the nest egg, the money that it earns while invested might also cut a few years off of my journey to financial independence. Now, I invest in 2 ways when I get paid. First is through retirement accounts. The great folks at HR automatically deduct enough to max out my Roth 401k every year. That makes sure I get the full company match, but I also get tax benefits on the rest of that money. Then, if I'm under the income limit, I'll also max out my Roth IRA this year. And I will be under the income limit unless you like this video, and if you like the channel, hit the subscribe button. Once all that is done, the rest goes into a personal brokerage account, and my payday routine is complete. You'll notice that some of these steps don't require me to do anything. A lot of it is automated. And that's by design. That means my real payday routine is just writing down what I earned and what was deducted, deciding how much to leave in my bank account, and just investing the rest. I'm a big believer that simplicity is better. Remember, I'm trying to get as much of my earnings into investments as fast as possible so that money can get to work compounding and helping me reach financial independence. Now, I started this video acknowledging that most Americans don't have a payday routine like mine, and most definitely aren't on track to save $50,000 this year. So before I ended this video, I wanted to give a few general words of advice that I hope will help you make your payday routine look a little more like mine. No matter what, you need to be tracking your money. You just can't fix what you haven't measured. I've seen people absolutely shocked when they realized how much they were spending on purchases they thought were small or infrequent. When they actually did the math, those purchases added up to a lot. So I highly encourage you to track your expenses in one way or another. It won't fix your income habits, but it will tell you what needs fixing. Second, I'm a big believer that simplicity is better, and I've seen a few paycheck routines that I think are just too complicated. I'm trying to funnel my earnings into investments, and complexity turns that funnel into a colander. If you've kept good track of your income and your expenses, you'll know what your biggest holes are. I've plugged as many of those holes as I can for my personal lifestyle, but the average American has not. And hey, lastly, set the right goals. Yeah, I'm trying to save $50,000 this year, but most people shouldn't. For a lot of families, that's just unattainable. See, I don't make YouTube videos to tell people to be like me. I know I'm kind of on the extreme. I make videos to show people what's possible. What's actually right for you will depend on your own circumstances, and you should set goals that make sense for yourself. Oh, and there's one more thing you need to do, which is to watch this video right here. Because in that video, I'm going to explain how cutting out a morning coffee could save you 24 years of work. Does that sound crazy? It is, but I'll prove it to you using super simple math. Your payday routine should definitely include big savings like that. So I hope you enjoy. I'll see you next time.